off. I've got enough people here who are on, and let me kick this off to the data first solutions for 3PL users and some of their challenges. Appreciate you guys joining. My name is Carl Hammis. I'll go through a formal introduction, but really trying to get you to feel comfortable about what's out there today from a digital supply chain world. Verte, we are a single cloud-based software solution specifically tied towards the supply chain. So I wanted to do an introduction to this event. This event is for you. It's for you in the service side of the fence or the 3PL side of the fence. Is a lot of things have changed. We were in a very unique marketplace in the supply chain world with the pandemic and short labor out there and things that have been making major impact. You guys as service providers have been looking for more streamlined ways to overcome some of the challenges. And I feel like this is the focus here today. And we've been able to get a panel of very deep experienced individuals here. I'm going to start off by introducing Jesus Cruz. Jesus has over 20 years of experience in the 3PL fulfillment space. He is the president of Unified Logistics, which is headquartered in Miami, Florida. And so you're going to hear from Jesus and be able to ask questions, which I'll post here in a little bit on how you can get to do that. But the other panelist that I have here is Padhu Raman. Padhu works here at Verte, and Padhu is our Chief Product Officer. He has also around 25 plus years of implementing, designing, and deploying advanced robotic and automated systems dedicated for the supply chain. So I think he has a lot to offer and for you to attain. We also have Jarvis, who is part of Quickbox. And Ron has about 20 years of experience on the 3PL space, logistics space, very deep experience with a lot of senior executive responsibilities running major 3PL facilities. He's based in Phoenix, and Quickbox is a fast-growing 3PL provider based out of Denver, Colorado. And then not last, but we have Steve Bullard, and Steve Bullard is our Senior Vice President in charge of the operations here at Verte. I think you'll get a lot of insight on not just how he's handled the changes in the marketplace today to allow Verte to become more agile and to support our client base. But Steve also has a lot of senior executive experience in the back end prior to Verte that, his wealth of information is something that I learn from every day. That leads to myself. I'll be the monitor here, and my name is Carl Hammis, and I come with about 25 plus years of experience, primarily focused on the enterprise software space. And with here at Project Verte, prior to Project Verte, I worked for a large enterprise software company called Oracle, and have deep experience in the supply chain and enterprise offering. So let's kind of kick things off here. These are the 4 topics that we're focused on touching on. The integration being the agenda number 1, and we'll kind of break it out to what are some of the problems out there. We'll also talk about and gain expertise input on some of the solutions and of course some real life use case experiences. Then we'll move on to the data component here. I think that's important to understand as 3PL service providers have found themselves in a unique situation on giving the customer not only the visibility that they're requiring, but their demand to have a better and more consistent customer experience is something that from a data perspective can really filter and supply some of their high demands. And then we've noticed some of the challenges in the 3PL world from the legacy standpoint of technology that was invested years ago and trying to keep up with the demand channel of the cloud and some of the agility that it offers. So we'll touch base there. and then we'll finally move into the changes that we've been seeing and some of the challenges in this fulfillment digital network. As I touched on earlier, there's a section within Zoom that you can ask questions. So please feel free to ask questions. And we're going to have a Q&A event at the very end of this session. So if that works for you, we'll move on. I wanted to throw this out here because, as far as the integrations piece, we've heard time and time again with 3PL providers making comments that their IT resources have been stretched. And as they onboard more clients, that becomes more difficult. And I was interested for Steve to add his view on why they're going through these tough experiences and what they could do to mitigate some of this.
There, it helps, I guess, if I unmute myself. So thanks for the question. Yeah, so it's the proverbial bowl of spaghetti that everybody talks about when we talk about integration. It's all the different data connectivity. It's all the different places and channels that you have to connect to, that everybody's different experience levels, capabilities, as well as different systems and different sophistication of those systems. So the quantity and the diversity of those IT requirements can be overwhelming. And as you expand your business, the amount of customers, the amount of demand channels, the amount of different sources that you're connecting to, other 3PLs, can start to put a strain on any IT department. And so the larger you get as a 3PL, the larger those issues become. And if you're a smaller 3PL, the amount of bandwidth that you have to spend just on connectivity or integration can take resources away from focusing on external or customer flow. So that really is the challenge today is how, the supply chain is about managing data now, and integrations is how you manage that data.
Yeah, well said. I appreciate that, Steve. If I were to pass this over to, let me go back a little bit here, and get a poll of what you guys from a user and 3PL space, if you could share, what you're finding out there with your company and how you support a cradle to grave customer and their order flow and all the demand channels that are involved in it, whether that being working with third party, the Shopifys or the Amazons of the world, and of course to other applications out there. If you could respond to the poll, and we'll do a posting on what the results are. And it looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty posting and giving you the ability to vote on that. So what I'll do is at the end of this, we'll open that up for discussions on who wants to add some input and during our Q&A event, and we'll see if we can get some responses to that. So when it comes to this integration piece, and Steve talked about how it become more challenging for both small and larger 3PL providers, I'd be interested to hear your input there, Padhu, on some of the solutions that you're seeing as we're moving into this digital native commerce environment from a cloud perspective. So if you could add some color to that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, right. So at this point, as Steve alluded, right, there are a lot of challenges with connecting to multiple trading partners, the dynamics and the data change. So the fundamental avenues you're looking at to have a solution, which is more of a cloud native, which is a platform as a service or software as a service, which enables you to scale, easily add new features, and deploy with a little customizations or complicated configurations. The idea is you have a simple ease of integration, ease of use, and ease of change management as a primary philosophy in building the solution or deploying the solution, and then enabling to simply connecting to all the different demand channels, so that it could be a shopping cart, it could be a marketplace, it could be an traditional ERP systems, and then extracting them and then finding the right fulfillment source, because you are not restricted to one fulfillment center, but a network of fulfillment centers, how easily you can connect the inventory, do an order orchestration, connect to the transportation across multiple different providers. Every day the provider is changing, and how we effectively connect. So those are the primary aspects of what we look for a end-to-end integrated solution. And at Verte, we are building customers and one unified platform, which enables us to in a simplified way to connect to all the trading partners, and also enable us to manage a way of unstructured data into a more structured form. The future of the road.
Yeah, thank you for that, Padhu. I appreciate that very much. Why don't we move over to get some input from Jesus on, or excuse me, with Ron, if you don't mind, Ron, you kind of thrown in some of your experiences and tips between planning for each of these channels that are being integrated into.
Yeah, thanks, Carl and Padhu, for giving me the opportunity to join today. You know, when you talk about channels, some of the things that we look for at Quickbox, right, is, you know, Padhu talked about the transportation network, which is absolutely important, but within the fulfillment centers, you know, you look at two different channels as well, as far as the retail B2B side and the, you know, the direct to consumer side. As both are important, you got to look at them, each individual one have the unique differences, and how do we combine the two and provide one WMS or OMS that can support the two to manage that and manage the transportation as well. You know, it's definitely important where, you know, the B2B, you know, the predictability between the two is definitely different, where, you know, you have more predictability on the B2B side, where the direct consumer, you know, is less predictable. And you just need to make sure that you have the right IT resources and everything else to be able to manage the different channels.
Very well done. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate your tip of the day here. You know, after the integration piece, we talked about the power behind the data. So I would be very interested. I'm going to pull you in again, Steve, because of your background and experience. And how do you turn all this data that 3PL service providers are trying to handle and manage for their clients and turn it into a productive tool?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll state the issue, and the issue is that once you do get integrated, you both your internal teams and your customers are going to be overwhelmed with the amount of data, right? The data itself is not a particularly helpful tool. You've got to be able to translate and transform that data into usable and constructive tools for your clients and your internal team. So that's the real crux of the next step, is once you do have the information, once you do have the data, is how do you now transform that data into usable functional tools for your client base.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. You know, once you've got that, I guess I'll turn to Padhu and gather his insight on, you know, from a solution standpoint, what are you seeing out there to make that data more understandable, not only for their customers, but their partners, so they can make more effective business decisions?
Good point, Carl, right? As Steve indicated, data alone doesn't help, right? It has to be synthesized and made into more meaningful business decisions, metrics, and information. Let us take a use case of example, right? 2 years ago, on average, in a port of LA, you could clear a ship in 3 days. Now it takes 7+ days, 10+ days, right? So as the data is coming in, providing the business, what are the impacts to that, right? That's one metric. But what is actually impacting further downstream? Now you need to plan for that cascading effect. You need to have more people, more warehouses. What you planned has got disturbed. And how do you go back and plan for a better labor, dynamic labor planning? Labor is the biggest challenge today. And with these delays in the inventory and changes in the inventory positioning, you are affecting your peak performance as well, and corresponding cost, right? So if you think about supply chain as a three-leg stool, where your labor, your inventory, and your transportation. So you need to have these data provide real-time visibility so you can make a better informational and decision, and fundamentally breaking down the data into 4 different categories, right? You have the volume of the data that is coming in, the velocity of the data, then how it's moving and delivering it, and the variety of the data, and the veracity of the data, right? And that is what I think a better system which can provide a good data management, reacting to the unexpected and reacting to the dynamic variables that is happening in the market. So taking the data, synthesizing them, looking at all the parameters, providing a prescriptive way so that business can make effective decisions using the dashboards and reports that is coming out.
Yeah, well said. I appreciate that, Padhu. I'd love to pull in Jesus and get kind of a case study life experience that he's gone through, both from a before standpoint when he didn't have not only the data but the information under control, and what his experience has been since he's been able to use Verte to help control some of that information, make better business decisions. So Jesus, love for your input here.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, I think one of the things that we experienced as a 3PL is we had an older system that basically was very manual. It wasn't capturing a lot of the movement, the transactions in the warehouse, wasn't allowing us to see certain reports, and when it comes to do with operations. So I think bringing on Verte allowed us to get, I would say my number one would be visibility. It would allow us to see more accuracies as far as what our customer demands are, what their volume looks like. Projections allows us to measure that data in order for us to be able to be efficient on the floor, right? So I think that the other thing, it also reduces time. Reduces time for our customers. I think a lot of customers in the industry right now are looking for simplified methods, and bringing on Verte was just that. I think that it decreased the cost of my warehouse operations. It gave me more visibility. It gave my customers more visibility. In order for us to be able not only to provide a service now with their current volume, but also in the future, maybe their peak season starts to peak up a little bit, and we're able to handle that volume increase based with the system that we have now. So yeah, definitely Verte has been essential for our growth as a company, as a 3PL, but most importantly, now we're more efficient and more accurate.
Thank you, Jesus. I appreciate that. I'm going to keep you still on the panel here. If you could kind of, offer the tip of the day for those in the 3PL shoes, running a company just like you have, and are kind of in that before stage. I'd definitely be interested to add some helpful tips here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's finding, really the right balance of technology, process, and of course the culture of the company. But I think it comes down to primarily technology, because as our world has evolved, it's more technology savvy. We need to make sure that you have an automated process. One of the things that we're doing here at Unified is that we've created a manual process, but ultimately we will be more automated as time comes, and Verte's going to allow us to do that. So one of the things that I would say is that make sure that they're partnering up with the right software company. The other thing is to really do your research when it comes to software. There's so many different platforms out there, but one of the things that captured my attention with Verte was that you have 2 different platforms. You got your WMS and then you got your Unified Commerce, which is your seller's portal. And that seller's portal is complete access for them, gives them pretty much, really a bird's eye view of their entire their volume, what their orders look like, and what's pending and everything else. But I think most importantly is that you need to make sure that you have the right partner. And Verte has been that in order for us to be who we are today, but also who we're going to become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that there, Jesus. You know, now we're moving into the functional piece that I wanted to, you know, touch on some of the challenges that we've been hearing quite often. And Steve, I'm going to ask for your feedback here because with your experience on many levels, being in charge of a company, running the operations here at Verte, what's, in your opinion, could you walk through some of the challenges that 3PL service providers have between managing the costs and consuming the functionality from what's out there to better serve your clients?
Yeah, and so we're talking about technology, right? So we're not just talking about software, we're talking about hardware as well. And in a true multi-client environment, there's the constant balance of, you know, your revenues and the CapEx expenses that you're willing to make in your facility. And the challenge is finding that right balance, right? Is if you're going to support an omni-channel customer, meaning that you can support all those functionalities and the different unit of measures required in an omni-channel environment, do you invest in software? Do you invest in robotics or other automation? What's the ROI on that? And you know, what is the CapEx that you're willing to expend on that? Or do you go down a different path of more, you know, robots as a service and software as a service? And the other complexity around that is you're developing your ROI is, you know, the risk of buying technology that gets outdated quickly, right? So you have to make that decision tree as well. So there's a lot of complexity, especially in the multi-client 3PL environment, of what is that investment, and it is a buy versus build, which has its own cost and implications as well. And if you make the wrong decision, are your customers going to leave you for clients that are making those investments?
Yeah, that's a lot to think about. I appreciate that, Steve, a lot. You know, I'd be interested. Let's see if this poll that we have here is still in working order, because I'd love to get some feedback from everybody on, you know, how efficiently their WMS and some of the functionality applications they have to run their operations is working, whether they feel that it's very effective, somewhat effective, or not effective at all. So let's see here. And it looks like, you know, the host is not able to post that, the poll. So again, at the very end, we'll open this up for Q&A. We got a couple responses, so we got it working now. So thank you very much. It looks like the overwhelming response was, hey, it works, but it definitely needs some improvement. And that's something that, you know, we've run across a lot. And I certainly feel like opening that up, Steve touched on the ROI piece, and I think that's a huge piece to really take a strong look at. And, you know, what is the return on your investment to look at a next generation platform from a WMS perspective, as an example, and can it mitigate risk and control my cost and give my customers a more consistent experience? So we'll have that Q&A later on today, but appreciate that, your input there, Steve. From a solution standpoint, I know that Padhu, you in particular, have a lot deep experience coming from one of the largest WMS providers out there. What are you seeing changing in the marketplace for these applications and the functional capabilities in the supply chain world? And how do you go from the legacy environment that you may have invested in, call it 5 to 10 years ago, or even a few years ago, and go through that experience of having to handle an upgrade again?
Yeah, it's a good question. And if you think about a solution as a whole, right? The solution that is being used has to be more, I believe, in 3 R's, right? It has to be relevant, it has to be resonant, and it has to be resilient, right? From a capability standpoint. The entire supply chain world is moving to a more dynamic way of execution. So it has to move to more of a cloud-based. So you are moving away from your traditional maintenance of local infrastructure, local hardware maintenance, primarily because of the changes in the business, right? As Steve alluded before, we have an aggregation business and that needs to be supported by your WMS, omni-channel, different unit of measures, e-commerce, buy online, pick up in store, transportation optimization in a multi-tier distributed network, because your WMS is now, it's not just a four walls or solutions. It is key from that perspective, that is to be optimized in execution. But the reality is the environment is actually expanded to a broader network, right? Broader network of supply chain, because your channels are different, your way of operations is different, and all the inputs is different, right? So your solution has to be such a way that you are first looking for a cloud-based solution, moving from your legacy setup and system, and the system that can scale, operate in a better and in a futuristic view perspective, and looking for a software which is a pre-module with structural rules built in as much as possible, right? And then based on the current trends and scenarios, those structures rules are automatically redefining using AI-based framework and determining the rules and patterns, right? Once you define the rules and patterns in a traditional system, it becomes more static in nature. It might be relevant at that point in time, but those rules and patterns should be more dynamic in terms of automatically self-learning, so that based on the parameter change, it is able to execute better, right? So those are broader principle. And then definitely data, right? Data becomes the key factor in driving these rules and patterns. My 3 points would be is one, looking for a cloud-based solution like what Word provides, and from an end-to-end demand channel, order management, warehouse management, and transportation management is a one combined solution. So the data is shared, the information is synthesized in a better operating model, and focusing on the change management piece, which is easy to adopt, easy to use, and then easy to deploy.
Yeah, well said. I appreciate that. If I could get your feedback here, Ron, because you as a chief operating officer for a leading next generation 3PL, you guys have made some significant strides. When is the right time to make that switch for better technology?
Yeah, and this is a tough question because there's never a right time. I mean, Padhu talked about the ability to scale, and you'll know when the right time is when your WMS provider, whatever system you're using, is not able to scale both internally and able to scale with your customer. Mm-hmm. You'll know when that time is right to make that decision. You just need to make sure that you have the right resources involved, both externally and internally. And you know what you need to do going forward to make that switch, and make sure that you allocate enough time to bring on a new provider, a WMS system, and everything else. But there's never a right time, but you'll know when it's time to make it happen. And it's something that's nobody wants to do, but it's something that we're all going to go through one time, possibly multiple times throughout our career.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ron. Thank you very much. If we move on, the out of the four topics that we had here, the fourth one, which we touched on, is the fulfillment piece. And been hearing this over and over again, is how do you compete with the Amazons of the world? So I would be very interested from your perspective, Steve, to explain to me what you're seeing out there as some of the challenges and some of the risk involved with, do you invest, do you outsource? If you could add some color onto that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so that's the next big hurdle for everybody, especially in the North American market, about distributed logistics, right? Amazon has effectively really done a really good job of creating a true distributed network. They make it very easy for their clients to manage a distributed network, and have pushed that 2-day ground delivery requirement out to the marketplace. And so what does everybody else do to catch up with that, right? And there's lots of variables, like everything else we talked today, around that. I mean, it's very, very expensive CapEx to go out into other markets.
Mhm.
And there's risk associated with other markets and what's the right place to be, or do you out and try and find that partnership network that leverages the markets you need to be in, right? So there's very high capital costs associated with that. There's labor, there's tax implications. And so from that perspective, the problem really is not around, do you go out and build and try and duplicate that massive concrete that Amazon out there, is how do you leverage technology to build a virtual network that supports that kind of concept of endless aisle, right?
Yeah. 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 That endless aisle, I've been seeing that as that trend, having that flexibility. So I appreciate that input. That's a lot to consider for a 3PL who's looking to scale and address some of their current customer problems. From a fulfillment as a service, you touched on that, the endless aisle there, Steve. What are you thinking and seeing out there, Padhu, as how do you expand your network? If, to Steve's point, getting to the point of being agile and have that endless aisle, how do you become that fulfillment as a service?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one is, how do we evaluate, right? Whether we want to go to one fulfillment center or node or to multiple fulfillment, you leave at that fulfillment service network node to decide, right? Because that is a complex problem to solve. The broader parameters would be is, do we have an adaptive storage requirements, right? So as the space your business is increasing, what is your storage requirements? Two is what is the fulfillment cost associated with it, and inventory cost associated with it, and then looking for a more flexible storage requirements and a pricing model, so I can get into a fulfillment node and get out based on a pop-up requirements or order requirements, factoring those things. The other aspect is not only from a forward fulfillment. We have to think from a faster returns and re-commerce, right? Because today I may be shipping from Atlanta to a West Coast, and then West Coast I'm getting returns are happening. That return product is actually a sellable product in many instances. So how do I go and not only looking from a forward profits, but also looking from a recovered profits, which is a re-commerce profits as well, right? How do I get it faster, put it into a re-commerce site and make that quick gains and not losing the sale, right? So primarily to do this multi aspects of it, we need to have a broader technology footprint which can connect to all these fulfillment centers, which operates at different types of service level or execution level in terms of unit of measure, service levels, execution methods. Some may could do a manual method, some may do in robotics, some may do in traditional conveyor sortation. So you need to have a system, a technology that looks at all the parameters, how well the fulfillment centers can operate, how well I can allocate the orders, how well I can meet the service level requirements. So the answer is, you need a technology provider as well as a service provider who's blended, somebody like Verte to support it.
Yeah, well said, well said. Thank you, Padhu. With that, I'd love to get Jesus to talk to us. He went through this himself, feet on the street. Ideally, what is a fully integrated system, and any input you can add to your based on your experience, Jesus, would be welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. I think networking with the proper 3PL, I think that's definitely step one, right? For me, from a 3PL standpoint, it's kind of like what Padhu said, in order for me to go and expand and kind of duplicate my operation, it's complicated. It's complicated, and let's face it, it's expensive. So I think one of my tips that, for the 3PLs out there are they're trying to figure this out, I would recommend to make sure that you're networking with the proper 3PL. How do you do that? To make sure that they have full integration with your system, where they have capabilities. The other thing is that you want to aim for scalability. So you want to make sure that you partner up with the right company that's able to grow, that's able to support the demand, what you're bringing down that pipeline. The other thing is to make sure that you find the provider that offers that omni-channel. So that kind of coincides, that parallels to your technology, and also, overall, just making sure that you establish the proper partnership. But it doesn't end there, Carl. It goes into the technology piece. You need to make sure that you have an ongoing support through the whole process, and a fully, completely integrated system. One of the things that we've realized with Verte is that, let's face it, in a 3PL or any logistics company, you always need to have an IT team. We have some support here from a local level, but I think Verte bringing on their support from an IT standpoint, that ongoing support, it's impactful. And it's a tremendous cost savings when you look at it from a cost standpoint. But so I would definitely recommend to make sure that you're partnering up with the right 3PL with some of those parameters that I talked about, but also to making sure that you're partnering up with the right software company, a company similar to Verte that not only can offer you from a technology standpoint, but also could support that as you continue to grow into the future.
I appreciate that tip there, Jesus. I have a respected leader, Padhu, who talks about people, process, and platform. So, and those are the things that you touched on there. So thank you so much for that tip. I'm going to give it another shot here, you guys. And again, if you could, if I'm not successful, we've had some technical issues, but it looks like I've got the post now and the polling working. But if you could share your experience with networking with other 3PLs in the past, I think that would be helpful, because knowing it and getting it, was it a positive experience, a neutral or poor experience? Because we see a lot of change coming here with 3PL providers working together. And if you could just log in your poll results here, that would be welcomed, and we'll share it. And I've got a response here, and I've got interesting. I've got some comments that says, hey, we've had some positive experience working with other 3PLs. Overwhelmingly, though, the experience has been mixed. And we talked about not only having a consistent experience with your customers, but also with your partners as well. That could lead to a positive experience from a partnership and a long-term experience at that. So again, we'll open up for Q&A a little later on. One of the things I wanted to make it clear, you guys, here at Project Verte, we do feel very strongly that we have the leading edge technology. I really welcomed and appreciated both Ron's and Jesus's input. We do have a team here at Project Verte dedicated to at least opening up conversations. And we'd like to understand what some of the challenges you're being faced with, and how as partners we could work together to form a strong relationship. So what we'll do is we'll post a general link that you could log in and place a request if you'd like to speak to somebody here at Verte and learn a little bit more, whether it's about the integration piece, whether it's about how we help users like Jesus aggregate data. And of course, our functionality capability is something we can open up for conversation. And going back to what Steve said, that endless aisle network of fulfillment service providers that we're seeing and we're growing within Verte can be something to take a strong look at. And we'd love to open up those discussions with you. I also wanted to touch on, we do have an ebook that is available if you wanted to do some research on your own. That to learn how Verte is different than the other providers. And the other providers have been out there for a long period of time, mind you, and we respect that. We feel that having those 4 quadrants that we talked about on the agenda built into the system to act as one and be a full tech stack offering can give users like yourself options, number one, and of course, be a disruptor with how you do business with your clients, right? And how we call it stickiness, how you get closer to your clients so you can maintain that relationship and grow your business with that client. So, here we are, we're getting towards the end, and I mentioned that through, we had some polling that was working and some of it not, but I wanted to open up. I did receive some questions and Q&A, and some of them are quite interesting. One question came in from an anonymous person that said, how do we use some of these tools and not others? Or is this all encompassing? So in other words, what if I want to use some of what Verte has to offer, but not all of it? And maybe I reach out and have Padhu make a quick comment on that, because that one I get all the time is, hey, you guys could do an awful lot. Maybe I want to take some baby steps here, or maybe there's some more priority things in mind that I would like to tackle before consuming. Is there a way I can kind of crawl, walk, and run here?
Absolutely, right. So that's the premise of the entire Verte platform, where you can deploy a certain modules, you deploy the entire modules, or you do a crawl, walk, run, is where you want to convert your existing WMS to Verte WMS, and then slowly migrate into an order management, because you're moving from one distribution center to multiple distribution center, and your sellers are actually, or your customers are actually moving from one demand channel to multiple demand channels. So we can deploy a solution as they are growing, and we can also deploy the solutions to grow with them as well, right? So that's absolutely flexibility. And many of our customers, some of the customers who use only in our order management and unified commerce, because they already have an existing WMS, existing processes defined. It's just their customers want to now connect to different demand channels. So we connect to any WMS so that there's no, again, our principles are the same, right? Ease of onboarding, ease of change management, and ease of integration. So we simply integrate to the existing WMS, their processes, and then enable them to an outside world to connect to demand channels or transportation providers and make that transition smooth. The answer is yes, flexible, adaptable, scalable, deployed in one complete module or smaller modules. The data and the information is across the modules, so you get the same experience, whichever modules you use.
Yeah, that's really neat, Padhu. And I'm going to actually switch it a little bit here. I'm going to ask Jesus, because it seems like you're really capable. It seems like Verte has all this functionality capability, but I want to talk to somebody who actually went through that onboarding process. So there was a question, an anonymous question that said, walk me through, what are we talking about here? Because my experience is sometimes this could take 12 months. Matter of fact, I've heard from some users that it even goes to 18 months. So I'd love to hear from an actual use case user like Jesus. What was your experience onboarding with Verte?
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. I think that for us, what's kind of, or it creates a contrast, is that we had an other system that was implemented, older system, very manual, didn't capture everything, didn't have an accounting module to it. And here we are kind of looking for a solution, and we ran into Verte. Verte offered the whole package, right? So we basically can run our entire 3PL warehouse from a warehouse standpoint, or a WMS standpoint, but also from the fulfillment side. That captured my attention, but obviously, with all the different modules that it offers as well. As far as the support, and I talk about that, and I highlighted that previously, I want to make sure I emphasize that, because the support team at Verte was phenomenal. And probably I'm understating that. It's for the simple fact is that not only they provided a very smooth transition to get me on board, get myself and my team trained in a short period of time. Really, a lot of people, and I've heard that before, a lot of companies take about 8, 12 months or something like that. We took probably about a good maybe 4 to maybe 5 months, maybe, kind of doing all the different training and implementation from a virtual side. But again, this is something that separates Verte from a lot of different platforms. Verte offered that they can also put some boots in the ground. And that created, not only from a software standpoint that helped us and do the implementation, the integrations, and all that stuff, and all the training, but also kind of help us set up the stage, help us create that environment in order for us to welcome the customers, to bring on the customers, and what that looked like moving forward. So that's definitely, I would, if I were to highlight Verte's, I guess, implementation process, it's smooth and it's efficient. And, again, it's different in the sense of they're just not your ordinary software company. They are companies that have put some boots in the ground, create the environment, help you create the proper efficiencies, even from an operational standpoint. I had guys on my floor like saying, "Hey, let's not put the packing station here. Let's put the packing station on another side to make it more efficient in order for us to get to it a lot quicker, whatever the case may be." So overall, it's been a great experience, and we're still on the journey, and we're excited what the future holds.
Yeah, thank you, Jesus. I appreciate that. I did hear, and it's funny, and it matched with the question that I wanted to get Steve's input, because that was really striking. I'm a 3PL provider, and I don't have a big footprint. And Steve, you being the VP of operations, walk me through that onboarding experience with, how do we start? Can we utilize this network ourselves to our benefit? And then the second part of the question is, are you looking at the same data that I am? And do you have like a team that could give advice to us on what we should be considering as far as moving our inventory potentially with another partner?
Yeah, so the bottom line is that we as a company have really decided to be asset light in terms of the way that we're going out to the market. And so we are very aggressively building a virtual fulfillment network. It's not new. It's the old 4PL, 3PL model. What's different is the amount of connectivity and the way that we're managing that. So because of our technology stack, we are able to connect in different ways, very robustly with different partners. And that allows our system back to our clients to be a single source of truth, right? And that becomes a very compelling story because it's invisible to our customer base who we're leveraging out on that market. And to Jesus's point, I feel like that we make it easy to participate in that systemic collaboration because of the integration tools and the robustness of the software and being able to translate that data into usable functional data. And what's happening as a part of that, quite honestly, is one of the historical challenges around kind of merging multiple 3PLs into a single seamless entity is everybody wants to use their WMS, right? And we want to use, the more WMSs you add to your plant in your facility, the more things you have to manage, the more things that go wrong. And we have more and more clients on the 3PL side that are actually embracing our WMS because because it's cloud-based, because it was omni-channel built from the ground up. It really supports the direction they want to go, and it supports the old business as well. And so, I mean, that from my perspective, this is the new future for distributed fulfillment in the U.S. and North America specifically is partnering available space, right? Truly finding not the flex model necessarily, and not to say anything's wrong with the flex model, but the idea that you find space when it's available, and every 3PL player, I mean, business is only useful to you when you need it, right? And business is only useful when it's profitable to you. So the idea of locking space down and all that isn't viable. But if you have a connected network and you can reach out to a partner and say, hey, I have a client that has a need in your market and it's economical business, it's very easy to integrate that and connect that. I think I answered your question, Carl.
No, that was great, Steve. I really appreciate this. There's so many questions out there and there's so much to think about. And I think Verte has taken a very hard look to simplify this information, record it, monitor it, and track it, and build it into leading practices to help, whether you're a startup or a newly developed 3PL provider or an enterprise provider. I feel like there's a starting point that we could begin conversations with you. I mentioned we are going to send out a link if you want to talk to a specialist here at Verte. I also, if you look at your chat, I had one of our teammates from the marketing group post that ebook link where you could download the ebook for why Verte and its challenges and how it's been disrupting the supply chain marketplace. Please take a strong look. It's a great book. And I don't know this gentleman here on the video keeps raising his hand, but I will extend myself and say thank you so much to Ron. I personally got to know Ron here at Verte, and he's got a wealth of experience, and what he's been doing at Quickbox has been just amazing. And of course, I want to say thank you to Jesus, because he's been very open with us. He talked about partnership so many times. I counted on one tipping point, hot tips, that he mentioned partnership 4 times, and we feel the same. So we welcome that partnership with Unified Logistics, and we thank you all for attending this event. Thank you, and feel free to reach out to us. We look forward to speaking to you further.